everybody. This is Jon Stewart along with Cueball Carmichael for another edition, Sunday. That's your day. It's our day for Truthbusters Live. If you haven't joined us in the past couple of weeks, we did some retooling, back on the air with a bang. The response from our sponsors and fans and listeners, friends and family, has just been awesome. Our 6-part series on aliens. And, we're not talking about little green men here. We're going deep, and we're starting from the beginning. First episode was, the Bible. We covered Tiwanaku and Pumapunka. And tonight is a special on the Mayans. And everything that happened with that culture is about similar to Pumapunku, where you ask, why did they do that? We're going to get to that. I've got some mail to read. It's not viewer mail. It is from our management company that, I don't know, Q, do they own us? Or I don't know. I've been informed I'm under contract, some bizarre thing.
Let's just say they control us.
They didn't send it to Cueball or our producer, Nick London. Idiot Charlie the Chump, as my mom would say, got the email. Let me get it here. We're getting hollered at. So, I thought, we're the Truthbusters. We tell it all live on air. Nick London, I see you laughing in the studios in Canada. You've been named in the email too, brother. So, I can't call management by their name. Cueball refers to as the head guy is Adolf Eichmann. We've got Attila, and of course one of our female bosses is Lady Macbeth without the sincerity. Literature person, you would find that one. Q, when you met this woman, did she have the burnt campfire marshmallow necklace on?
Yeah,
that was.
Where were the rest of the s'mores that went with that necklace?
Where'd she buy that from? Okay, we don't want to cause any more trouble. So here's the email that we got. I'm going to paraphrase because we got to get to better things. Cueball, my host, my partner and host, Cueball Carmichael. Q, tobacco chewing and spitting no longer allowed. Mentioning. You're not going to believe it. Did you get this or not? Did you get this email? Okay. Mentioning, predicting, or describing any military movements or deployments. Is that from the show where you said you were talking? No, I know. That's the show where the with the COVID, if nobody showed up at the power plants, and you said somebody and one of your friends said they're deploying somewhere, can no longer do that because you're letting military secrets out on air. Nick London, our producer, is banned from leaving voicemails to the corporate office describing the maiming, killing, beheading of any of the staff in the IT department. Nick, did you say some naughty words on the voicemail sometime?
Well, sometimes I get a little bored.
Okay, well, don't call him anymore. Jon Stewart. Do we have the ding sound effect? No longer allowed to drink from cups on air with logos and advertising. So, McDonald's? Okay, so now I got my lovely wife Jojo and I. Oh, am I following?
Never thought of that, man.
No longer allowed to wish, predict, or plan the intentional harm or killing of any members of Congress.
Oh my God.
Okay, I said the peasants would come to their houses one day. That's not intentionally. And lastly, Jon Stewart, the abuse of Will Jones, the intern, no longer allowed to give me coffee, walking Sonny the dog, or calling Grubhub for me, or watering my arborvitaes. What? Look, you. What? They're like in cahoots. They think like our house is the botanical gardens of Chicago. These trees are like I owe more money to my landscaper than I do to American Express. I had him water because Will Jones doesn't print anything out of the computer. I'm printing and looking up things, and I mean, I love the kid, but and getting me coffee, isn't that what an intern's supposed to do? So,
hey,
so that's it. So we got that out of the way. Thank you, management in New York
It's kind
City.
of funny, John.
And we'll be behaved.
They must have actually watched the shows that we started doing in January finally.
Right. Yeah, right. Did you happen to think you might want to listen in once in a while? Okay. I had to read that on here. Okay. Here we go. Let me get that. I'm organized today. Here we go. Okay. So been talking. This is our third part on aliens, and we went over in the beginning Sumerians, Puma Punka, Tiwanaku. We went over the three. I guess you would call the three questions that we'd like answered. Which is the biggest one is why? Why in the age when you're trying to just survive and eke out as an existence for your family 1,000 years ago, you're fighting everything from, infections, bacteria and infections, animals, the environment, feeding one another, local tribes trying to kill you. You're building 300-foot, 30-ton blocks of stone monuments. It's ridiculous to think that this is something that only man did back in the caveman era with simple tools. And yet again, Q, it's the same repetitive theme on different continents before air travel, before communication, intercontinental communications. We're talking, 5,000 years ago up until 700-800 years ago, where cultures all over the world are doing the same damn thing without ever knowing one another. These monuments, these pyramids, these temples, these ziggurats that defy logic, defy the reason why they were built, and most importantly, defy the question, how did you build something like this when we really don't even have equipment today that could do this and replicate it? And the Mayans, of course, built some of the greatest temples all over Mexico and the Yucatan Peninsula. And one of them that we will talk about is Chichen Itza, and why and who. You are extremely read and schooled on this, Q. So take us back 600 years ago, before Cortez came aboard his ships and sailed to Mexico and gave smallpox to everybody and killed everybody on the continent. But
right. Well, Chichen Itza dates back to 400 AD, and it lasted and thrived for over 900 years. It was a civilization with hundreds of thousands of people in it. It had streets and roads, and it's pretty amazing. There's a variety of different buildings and structures in Chichen Itza. There's El Castillo, the castle. There's El Caracol. And we're getting into those, but I wanted to refer back to you, John, because you've actually been to Chichen Itza in person. How is it in person? Is it as big as it looks?
Yeah, the complex, or the ground, so to speak, is huge. It is. There's not as much vegetation. I'm going back. I was on a cruise to Cozumel, Cancun. And that's when I took a day trip there. And I'll never forget, the tour guide would always say, why did the Mayans build this? And I'm asking 20 years later, why too? I'm not making fun of him. It was just the way he said, why? And, and it's funny because it's the same question we have. Why? And you go there and it's this very level. That's interesting. very level, like they did excavation. I mean, like it's not, I wouldn't even say a football field, because a football field is crowned like a base, a foundational base of a huge building. That is the ground. It is just flat as a board. And I climbed, I think it was El Castillo, which is the biggest, and very steep. I'm thinking that 200 feet, 250 feet in the air, you get to the top of it and you can see the Caribbean Ocean. I mean, it's beautiful. And, but the feeling of being there, I would only describe in layman terms as weird-o-rama. My daughters love when I use that word from Chevy Chase's Vacation, but right. I mean, just weird. Nothing made sense. Why would you do this? What made you do this? Like Egypt, like Tiwanaku, like Pumapunka, like the Sumerians, like Bosnia, Turkey, Greece, China. Why? Why would you drag, or how did you take 2-3 ton blocks of stone up 200 feet? And I mean, you look in the edge, and like we said with Pumapunka and Tiwanaku, you can't even get a playing card in there, and it just defies logic. And the ability to make on the side of the steps, and I know you'll talk about this, is the back of a dragon. The alligator
feathered,
teeth,
feathered serpent.
Yeah, upside down triangles. Yeah.
Cooler.
When he lights it turns into a dragon. The other thing, and I got the name of it, the skull platform. Oh, here's another thing. Just like Pumapunka and Tiwanaku and other sites, there's the skull platform where these indigenous people carved the faces of many different types of creatures, humanoids, skeletal creatures, you name it. It looks like the wall of a funhouse. Just like in so many other granite stone complexes around the world that defy all reason. We have it here at Chichen Itza. And, it was weird. It was creepy. It didn't make sense. Impressive beyond belief. And to build this to garner weather or, to a god, how can my question is this, and I'll flip it back to, how can a make-believe god, a sky god that you've never seen, how could something like that promote you to undertake such a massive undertaking of construction like that? And most importantly, before power tools and heavy equipment and the internet and universities and knowledge, how did you do this? How did you do it? Because they still don't know how it was done. So, a weird experience. It was really impressive. I'd go back and but again, I've seen something up front that I cannot explain with any kind of rational thought.
Yeah, and the thing about that we've discovered, and really what we're doing is we're going to give you a 6-part series on ancient civilizations, the way they were built with massive amounts of technology to precision that can barely be done in 2020. And we're going to let you decide if they had some help from people from the sky. And, there's a couple places at Chichen Itza that bear witness to the fact that they were great astronomers back in an era where there were supposedly no telescopes. And one of the things is there's El Castillo, which is the castle, and then there's El Caracol, where visitors go crazy and go there because every year on the spring and fall equinox, when the sun sets, you'll see Kukulkan, which is their god, who is called, for lack of better words, a feathered serpent. And when the sun sets on the steps, the serpent actually appears via shadows that have been carved in there, comes cascading down the steps like it's walking or crawling down the side of the steps. And there's some interesting things with El Caracol, which has been dubbed the observatory. And if you look at this observatory, it's reminiscent of, take a look at the observatory on the top of Haleakala crater on Maui, or any observatory in a semicircular sphere with windows and openings to put out telescopes. Caracol looks just like that. It's got shaft-like windows that record astronomical events. One window marks the appearance of Venus at a particular point on the horizon that gets this, takes place every 8 years. They have a window to see Venus when it goes into the house every 8 years. Can you imagine messing that up and having to wait 8 years to see if it worked again? They got it right the first time. They got it right the first time. You know, and it's funny because El Castillo also does the same thing. The castle, the structure as a whole is aligned with important astronomical accesses. The west plane of the pyramid faces the zenith passage, which is in the constellation, and the other side faces the sunset. And one faces the west plane, one faces the east. And it's kind of neat because there's 4 sets of steps going to the top of this. Now, each one of the steps has 91 steps. 4 of them up. Okay. One side, there's one final stop. So if you go 4 times 91, you end up with 364. And one of the steps has one additional step to make it 365, the actual days in a solar year. And they knew that back then. But also what's interesting is the 91 steps represents the exact amount of days between the winter solstice, the spring equinox, the summer solstice, and the fall equinox. They're all 91 days apart. And they made those steps exactly 91, one with an additional step to the top, making 365. It's crazy. But they didn't have any help or any technology in figuring that out.
Well, I mean, Q, you know, if I use Google and my brain now, I'm a semi-intelligent man. I couldn't, and if you took everything away from me, I couldn't tell you how many days. How could I put this? I could count the sunset, the sunrise, and the sunset. I could count the days. To tell you that we're back at 366 day, and it's the same as a year ago day. Come on, I mean, just stop the bullshit. You couldn't do that today. I don't think you could do that today with Google.
That's it.
You would know that it's the same. It's that a year has passed. I mean, whatever. Hey, look, we're gonna go to a commercial break. We're gonna pay some bills. This is Truthbusters Live. And back.
Well, John, I'm telling you, one of the things that I think that they use the marking of the equinox in the spring and the fall and the solstice in the winter and summer is I think that they probably use that for planting purposes because corn was a big crop down there. That's basically what they sustain themselves on besides hunting. And I think probably they use the spring equinox and the fall equinox as time to plant in the spring and time to harvest in the fall. But it really doesn't explain how they were able to figure out exactly how there's 91 days between each event and all the steps leading up to 365 days in a calendar year. And of course, something that you wanted to talk about was the Mayan calendar and the prediction for 2012.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you to our sponsors, by the way, for helping us out here. Yeah, the dud of probably the past 1,000 years of end of world prediction, the Mayan calendar and the Baku, we call them, and I there was so much noise, and I use that metaphorically. In 2012, and I believe it was December 23rd, that's when the world was going to end. And even myself was starting to believe, like, geez, does the government know something that they're not telling us? It did get a little weird at that time point, but there was something very interesting. And I could be wrong. Here on Truthbusters, folks, we do not sit here and pretend to be the all-knowing, the all-seeing eye. So we use a lot of words like it's our advice, we think. When we know, and we'll tell you. But I wanted to always try and get that across every other show because it's important for our credibility. Q, I think you agree with that. But one of the things that there was a professor of Mesoamerican culture back in 2012, and he said something really interesting. And if there's a professor or someone out there highly educated in Mayan culture, and forgive me, I'm going to paraphrase, but this professor was reading some of the I guess scripture, I would call it, from what the Mayans were saying at the end of the time period, I believe it was the 13th Baktun, end of that time, and then the beginning of a new cycle. And one of the things he said was, or that he interpreted, that they said was, on December 23rd, 2012, they didn't say that date, but at the end of the 13th Baktun, the emperor, the king, would take his throne before the grand festival or before the grand. I am trying to think of the word that he said, almost like the show,
Right.
Just taking and I thought to myself, well, that's pretty freaking interesting when you think about 2012 till an hour ago in the world. And I think if you had to describe something, or if somebody gave you a list of 15 descriptions of, how chaotic the past 8 years have been, I think you could make a good case for, here is the gods taking their throne or sitting down in front of and I'm going to trivialize this, the TV, and about to watch, as Charlin says, the greatest show on earth, the planet Earth. And I know that I trivialized it at the end, but I really think that I'm onto something. And I really think that professor was describing the Mayans, describing their culture, saying, we're going to take a back seat to what's going to happen for you people for the next 20, 30, 40 years. And, the emperor's taking his seat and waiting for the show to begin. And again, I don't want to sound sophomoric or trivialize it, but that is how I interpreted it. And I think, to be honest with you, it was right on the money because the world didn't end, but the show started. And
Yes.
with all intents and purposes. And the show started with everyone thinking the fucking world was going to end. I mean, you know, so it's like you plug in the TV and everyone's running around buying supplies and, you know, and acting crazy and all worried and full of anxiety. And you can make a case that the show began. The crazy, you know, the craziness on Earth has begun. And, you know, and when you start talking about cultures that are predicting and cataloging, and again, I mean, I couldn't, if you held a gun to my daughter's head, sit here and tell you the exact day, 365 days from now, if I was alone in a field for a year. I couldn't tell you the 366 day. So how did they? You know, oh, they had thousands of years of practice. Come on, please. I mean, I know there's people at home watching this laughing with us, not at us. That, you know, this is ridiculous. If you start, it's like 9/11. I'm not getting into that. I'm saying if you start to go over the government's actions on 9/11, you'd be like, you're lying, right? No. And when you go over what had happened, what they did, why they did it, it becomes comical. And building these structures, these ziggurats, for a fake god. And where did you get the concept of a dragon? And I find it funny. Why did China have as its, I don't know, it's almost like its mascot for 3,000 years, a dragon? What in the hell did these people see 5,000, 4,000, 1,000, 2,000 years ago that resembled what is a modern day dragon? Q?
Well, I think I have an answer for that. And the answer is this. You know, people have to imagine they're in a society that has never had transportation of any type. Except their feet. They've never had any media of any type. They've never went to neighboring places on vacation. All they've done is try to stay in one place and survive. And they have a lack of exposure for a reference point. So when they see something come from the sky, they're going to make this interpretation. Now, doing some research and talking back and forth with an expert, they call Kukulkan the feathered serpent. Now, they only had reference points to basically animals for this, but what one expert in astronomy has told me after he talked to an anthropologist is he believes, and this guy's Mesoamerican specialist, he believed the feathered serpent was actually a comet coming through the sky.
Oh,
because it had a trail. Comets have trails.
Sure.
The trails are sparkly, but they almost look like feathers. And it elongates itself to several thousand feet long as it's traveling to Earth. There's known meteoric and comet activity in that area of the Yucatan Peninsula going back thousands of years. I believe, because these guys have informed me and told me, that they believe the comet that went through the sky that was very close, landed and shook the Earth, so impressed them that their best frame of reference and depiction is a feathered serpent. And it's actually, for lack of a reference point, it's the comet they saw come through the sky, which also makes you wonder when they make these animals that look human with an animal head or an animal with a human head, what did they see? It's, last week we covered a wall that has every face known to any creed or religion or background or ethnic origin carved on the wall, along with two alien faces. Their frame of reference, obviously, for what looks like a typical gray, was an alien. So imagine this. You're standing there with your tribe. Your only communication is how we're going to get food today, how we're going to plant, how we're going to harvest. That's it. Build a fire, stay warm, shelter, fresh water. That's the only thing we're concerned with. And all of a sudden, something comes out of the sky and lands. Now, all people believe heaven is in what direction? Up. So if you see something coming from the heavens, replace the word heavens with the word space. You see something coming from the heavens, aka space, and it comes down and it lands in front of you, and somebody gets out of it, you are going to assume that that person is a god because they came from heaven. And I think that that's what happens. You know, these civilizations that we're covering, the exact geometric build of Chichen Itza is built again in alignment with the Orion constellation. They have an observatory before there was ever a telescope that focused on Venus, but only when Venus was in the seventh house every 8 years. The window was only used every 8 years. And ironically, as you know, they had the great ball field, the ball court. There's actually a section in Chichen Itza where they had a stadium and flat ground, and they assumed that they played some kind of ball, whether it was soccer, whether it was handball, whether it was fight each other until somebody dies. We don't know. But
well, the loser would die.
Yes,
the loser would get behind.
Exactly. The loser would die. So these civilizations were taught entertainment by somebody. Their structures are so precise, so precisely aligned that one window is just to see Jupiter every 8 years. Venus? Who told them that Venus was even there? Who helped them build a window that was perfectly aligned only every 8 years with Venus? I mean, the technology in which these buildings are built, the stonework, a master mason said that would be his finest stonework to build just one of the buildings, the Jaguar Temple. And he also said that it would take him, if he started when he was 20, the rest of his life, and he probably wouldn't complete it. So you look at this and you think all these depictions are based on a very limited frame of reference. So when you see something that comes out of the sky and it's shaped like a pyramid and it lands, and they teach you how to feed yourself, and they teach you about the stars and the constellations and the days in a year and when to plant and when not to plant, you're so grateful to these people that you now are going to erect a shrine or a monument to them. So when they come back, they'll say, we're proud of you. Let us teach you some more.
Right.
And that's my philosophy on these buildings. It's the only one that makes sense. The only other choice would be time travel. I don't think that's possible on purpose. I think there's parallel portals, but that's another show.
Yeah,
but,
you're right.
I mean, it's just so perfectly done, so long ago.
Yeah, I think that I'm not patting myself on the back. I'm just being realistic. I have a knack of breaking things down at times, story wise, and reinterpreting it or retelling it to someone so they could see my point a little bit better. And I always, I know I've said this another show, but I want to say it again. Folks, just think about it. Q and I are Mayans. It's 1,000 years ago. Some of our children have been dead at birth. We've been in battle with other tribes, maybe even with other people. We are etching out a living. We are fighting the elements. We're cold. We're hot. We're hungry. We're terrified. We're scared. We don't understand things in the sky. We're afraid of things in the jungle. People are dying every day. When you have a society 1,000 years ago in the jungle, 400,000 people, you're talking 15, 20 people a day are dropping dead of anything from, infections to natural death or whatever. And Cueball turns to me and says, let's go take the carved 4-ton blocks of granite and drag them up 100 feet because, I mean, folks, does that even, unless you're on LSD or you're nuts, does that even fly in any bit of of logic in your brain? And I'm not trivializing, I'm not breaking it down, I'm not being sophomoric. Think about it. Think about Cueball turning to me and the freaking look that I would give him in exchange, going, my wife just died, my kid died 2 days ago, our best friend, a jaguar, we found his throat slashed by a jaguar, and there's something, the thunder was so loud last night, it just, and I want to get to something else, and I want your opinion on this, because you're smarter than me. In a future show, we're going to do it on the Wisconsin-Michigan Dogman, the supposed, werewolf. We're going to do a show on that, and I'm one of the experts in the Midwest, but one of the realest experts. Anyways, but there's a person that we are going to talk about that has displayed something called re-victimization. Just bear with me here. It's a very short story. And he was so moved and traumatized by seeing, in my opinion, a really large Canadian gray wolf look at him and stand on two hind legs, that his whole life has been creating dolls, puppets, figures of this wolf creature, T-shirts, and I think there's a parallel. We're going to go to break. When we come back, I want to finish my description, my story. I'm dying to know your take on that. We'll be back in 1 minute when we pay some bills here and hear from our sponsors. Stay with us. And we are back, Truthbusters Live, Sunday edition, our 6-part series of aliens. Tonight we are talking about the Mayan culture, civilization, their predictions, and the uncanny similarity of yet another culture on a continent far, far away from other cultures that did the same damn thing, build these really large buildings, temples, pyramids, ziggurats out of 1, 2, 3, 30-ton blocks of stone for just no other reason, just to do it and to pay homage to something. No one's really quite given us an answer. With us, of course, our pilot on this crazy plane, Cueball Carmichael. As we were going into the break, I talked about a person that was traumatized by a creature and how it has taken over his life, and he is displaying something called re-victimization, and it's something that rape victims, abuse victims, prisoners of war display, where they cannot get over the trauma, PTSD basically, and they re-victimize themselves by finding a lover that has the same qualities of their rapist, or reminds them of their rapist, as sick as that is, or as somebody who abused them as children. They draw, they manufacture things that, whether that if they were stuck on a mountain and almost died, or they were in Vietnam, or things to constantly remind themselves of the trauma. As bizarre as that, as counterintuitive as that sounds, and I'm not going on here. I'm trying to make a good point. It's called re-victimization. They just cannot. They have to keep replaying it over and over. And I am as a I have a degree in counseling psychology, and I feel a strong, and I want your lengthy opinion on this. I feel a strong belief that these cultures, Egyptian, Chinese, Bosnian, American, North American, you name it. These people were maybe not traumatized, but they were so moved. They were so overwhelmed. Life-changing event happened to them. For them to look at their partner or fellow villager in the fields and say, let's do this crazy thing and spend the next 30 years hauling blocks of stone, 300. As they say in the South, that story don't make any sense to me. And it sounds like a version of re-victimization. Something high-tech I could not explain came down. They taught us, they gave us knowledge, they helped us, they're gone. It's 10 years later, they haven't come back. I can't get this out of my mind. Everyone around me is consumed with that day or that week or that year that this took place. And the only way to psychologically, and I mean this, to psychologically soothe themselves is to build these ziggurats and temples, hoping that, the victim, they can be re-victimized again. The aggressor can come back. Am I crazy or not, Q? What do you think?
No, that's exactly the thing that happened. And people have to understand, if you were watching national TV and the president came on and said the most important announcement in the history of the world will be made tonight at the White House, and he was out on the White House lawn and a UFO landed and an alien got out of it, even though you weren't there, you were just watching it on TV, you would feel like it's the biggest thing that you've ever seen in your life. It was going to change humanity as you know it. Now go back to Mesoamerica, go back to Egypt, to Turkey, to Iran, where all these pyramids are, Bosnia, China, where all these pyramids built, very, very similar. And they're all designed because when those people were out there in those fields working or at their village, this crazy thing came from the sky.
Right.
Never seen anything but bird poop fall from the sky before. And this gigantic machine comes down, and no matter what the person that got out of it looked like, and listen, I'm going to tell you right now, I don't know any more than most of you, but I can tell you, not all people from outer space look like little gray guys with big eyes and a big head. I guarantee you some of them, because now astronomers have said that there is 1 billion planets, billion with a B, that actually have an atmosphere similar to Earth. So there is got to be intelligent life out there. And
they call those the Goldilocks planets.
Yes, the Goldilocks zone.
Yeah.
So you think for a second that happened and you saw it on TV. Imagine being there in person and having that happen. Imagine one of two situations happened. They victimized you and made you slaves. And, a lot of this culture that we study, they really, it's been said that the human society was created as a worker bee to mine for gold in these places. Because gold still today is one of the best elements to be used in heat shields. It's very easy to work with. It can be used in computer circuitry. Gold is the gold standard for computer circuits because it moves electricity faster than any other metal. So let's say they came here and they forced these people, and there was a lot of gold in the Yucatan Peninsula, and they forced these people into basically working 16 hours a day and mining all the gold they needed to put in their ship to leave. The re-victimization, as you spoke of, happens because they can't get it out of their mind, and they're worried if they come back, if they come back and we haven't done something to show them that we're faithful or that we look up to them, they're going to do it to us again. So let's build something that looks like their spacecraft. Oh, I know. A triangle in the middle of nowhere. And let's not build one. Let's build 4 or 5. Now, we know they said they came from this planet that can only be seen every 8 years through this window. So we will watch out this window every day for 8 years and know if they're coming back, so we can all be waiting for them with a big feast, so they're not going to victimize us again. They're going to be our friends. Or, opposite equation, they were really good to the people. They taught them technology. They taught them weaponry. They taught them how to build these buildings. As a matter of fact, they even used a laser tractor beam to move the giant stones in place for them, so they didn't have to. And they said, look out that window and watch for us. You'll see us when we come back. But you only have to go up to that window every 8 years. So now we're going to teach you a calendar so you can keep track of 365 days. Every day, you put a big rock on the bottom step of this stairway. Every time the sun rises, you move it up one more. That's 91. When that one's done, go to the other set of stairs. 91, 91. All four of those. And the final step up in the middle leads to 365 days. That's when we'll be back. We'll be back in one of those. Just move that stone up those steps every day when the sun comes up, and you'll know when a year is. And when you got it up 2 of the steps, it's time to plant your fields. When you have it up the other 2 steps, it's time to harvest your fields. So one of 2 things happens. They victimized these people, or they were gracious to them, and they taught them amazing things and helped them build incredible buildings and cities and ball courts and observatories. So I agree with exactly what you said, and it's got to be one of the other 2.
Yeah.
It's got to be re-victimization, or they were benevolent.
Yeah, this obsession all over the world in antiquity with gold. Folks, I hate to tell you, gold is not the most precious metal on earth. There are about 7 to 10 other metals that arguably are way more precious than gold. So how we have been obsessed for 7,000 years with the metal gold, you can't explain it. Well, the Sumerians, that first culture that all of a sudden we were stabbing, impalas and eating their guts in the field. And all of a sudden one day we had government streets, schooling, language, alphabet. You know what those people said? People came down from the sky and fixed us, tinkered with us, and then used us to mine gold. The first culture that could read and write and communicate said, yeah, somebody came from the sky, tinkered with our basically DNA, and turned us into a freaking, like you said, kill a bee high worker race to the gold. So, there's so many cultures, and there's a culture, and I don't know the name, in South America where they would throw gold into the river to hope the gods would return. Why are you throwing gold into the river? What's the link from gold to these people that come from the sky? Well, the Sumerians told us what the link is. And that makes me to the next question that I'd like to talk about. I know we're running out of time. Is that the sacrificial in the blood of this Mayan culture that we really didn't see in Egypt and Samaria, to my knowledge, and really in North America and in China, we really didn't see this sacrificial, the sacrificing in the blood, and it's been written by the Mayans. This was to appease the gods, not killing a person so much, but their blood. And I find it funny, again, making another correlation, that we see these cattle mutilations where the only thing that is surgically taken with no loss of blood or spilling of blood is the mucous membranes around the anus, the eyes, the tongue, the mouth. And how many victims, I call them victims, of abductions who have been proven that their story is legit by Professor Doc of a college called Harvard, said that, these creatures that abducted me, they were interested in my semen or my ova, my ovaries and blood. And that how many people have been told that were abducted? How many people, ex-military, have told us that these aliens are trying to create a hybrid race. I don't think that's a really big, fantastical idea now that we know how to all about DNA ourselves, and use it with blood. They're getting this blood and the mucous membranes from cows, which cow's blood is very similar to human blood. And I'm, again, just like gold, here we have a culture obsessed with giving up to the gods blood. Why? It does, again, let me speak my broken English. It don't make any sense that you're going to kill your villager's daughter and rip her heart out 300 feet in the air on a monument to appease some fake illusionary sky god. It doesn't make sense to me anymore. What do you say on that?
Well, the correlation is very strong, and I wanted to revert back for people for a minute to a show we did on, and when we talked about the Great Pyramids of Egypt. The Great Pyramid of Giza, a king was credited for having that built in 20 years. And I saw the math on it. There's 2.1 million 5,000-pound blocks. A block that was cut 20 miles away and then brought there. This would mean, if it was built in 20 years, as archaeologists first said, a 5,000-pound block would have been had to put in place every 7 seconds, for cut, transported, and put in place every 7 seconds for 20 straight years in order to build that pyramid in 20 years. Who knows how long it took the Mayans to build these buildings, if, in fact, they even built them themselves, which I don't think they did. I go back to, when you look at the carvings and the sculptures, clearly, in some of these civilizations, you will see people standing over another person doing surgery with a scalpel that looks exactly like a doctor's scalpel used today. Now, who back 2,000 years ago or 3,000 years ago was doing surgery with a scalpel? I can tell you that it wasn't people, because they've never found the scalpel. So it couldn't have been people. So I believe that these gods came down here, and I believe that if you stick with Darwin's theory, man's only walked upright for 10,000 years, right? But Göbekli Tepe, that civilization is proven to go back 70,000 years. So the only way that the rest of the earth was had knuckle dragging people walking around, except for this one place where people stood upright and built these great structures, would be if something had come down and put a quick fix in their DNA string and had them go from walking on all fours to walking upright. And what a way to build a perfect worker bee, to take something that walks on all fours, stand it up on its back feet, make it big and strong and able to pick up and carry stuff or mine gold or do something like that. The only way that could happen in one area of the world and not the rest would be if somebody had altered the DNA string of those people.
Right. And, the people that might be laughing right now, oh, aliens tinkered with our DNA. Wait a minute. We're doing designer babies. We can pretty much give you a boy or a girl baby. Okay? Society, we can't thin out traffic at a freaking Dodgers game, but we have the technical ability to give you a boy or a girl through DNA. And you're going to tell me, and these are people who believe in the Bible that God created man from dirt, and it took a rib. And folks, I mean, come on, stop it. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It is not out of the realm that people way more intelligent than us came to this earth, a Goldilocks planet filled with weird creatures and water and sun and beautiful landscape, to be honest with you, and figured out that there were resources here, whether it be metal, whether it be human beings or upright creatures, that they could use for their own survival. The Sumerians talk about, they mined gold for what reason? To put it into the atmosphere at their planet because their atmosphere was dying. What do we have 4 days ago? A professor saying one way to slow global warming is to put flakes of gold in the. Look it up on Google. This was 3 days ago. A professor said we can do microscopic flakes of gold in the atmosphere. Now, how the F did the Sumerians think about putting something in the atmosphere to block the sun? And 7,500 years later, it's true. Come on. This cognitive dissonance. Just stop it. You're embarrassing yourself.
It's ironic that what you just stated about the Sumerians and putting the gold in the atmosphere,
right.
And suddenly it comes out. It's almost like we are admitting that we have discoveries today, but we're not admitting that these discoveries are 5,000 years old or 4,000 years old, because they don't want to rewrite all the history books. They don't want to tell every anthropology student, every archaeology student that their teachers and instructors were wrong. The government doesn't want to admit it. Nobody wants to admit it, so they sweep it under the rug. But it is ironic that just 3 days ago, somebody stated to the world what the Sumerians knew 5,000 years ago. How's that possible?
It's not. How did they come up with this concept 5,000 years ago? It's frustrating.
It's a great way to wind down the show, too, is to talk about that stuff. And, this ancient civilizations next week, we're not going to be on Facebook, but we're going to be on YouTube at 8 o'clock on Sunday night, Eastern Standard Time, 7 o'clock Central. Next time it's going to be 9 o'clock in Atlantic Time. Adjust your time schedules. But we're at Triple T Radio Live, and you can find Truthbusters next week, Sunday night, 8 o'clock live. We're going to talk about Luxor, Egypt, where there are tremendously gigantic statues and obelisks, right? Some of them look just like the Washington Monument, don't they? Kind of unique. And these obelisks, from end to end, are only a difference in tolerance of a couple thousandths of an inch. That's how precise they are. How is that possible? And we're going to delve more into this. And we've got another 3 ancient civilizations. And what we want you guys to do, if you would, just go to YouTube Live, go to the Truthbusters Live on YouTube, watch our last 2 shows on the ancient societies. You listen to this one. Watch the next 2 weeks. And at the end of this 6-part series, based on information that we are additionally going to give you, I want you to sit down and really think, if all these ancient civilizations had built pyramids by fluke all over the world when they've never met or talked, how they could carve faces of every person on the face of the earth and aliens, and how they could build these incredibly meticulously built structures with barely any tolerance at all. And I want you to think about the end of the 6-part series. I want to ask yourself this question. Did they have help? And if they did have help, where are they referencing that the gods and the help came from? Up from the heavens. Replace the word heavens with the word space, and it makes perfect sense. Replace the word God with alien, and it makes perfect sense. And I'm not saying there's no God. I'm a believer. I believe in Jesus. I know he died for me. But I'm just saying that there's other things going on in this world that people don't know about. And what do we say? We don't give you their truth. We give you the truth. And that's what Truthbusters Live does, guys. Every Sunday night at 8 o'clock, please join us. We appreciate you all watching tonight. It was a great show. I want to thank Jon Stewart, the captain of the ship, Nick London. If it wasn't for him, none of this would be possible. And for Cueball Carmichael, Johnny Stewart, Nick London, this has been Truthbusters. We'll see you next Sunday night, 8 o'clock on YouTube Live. You're going to go to Triple T Radio Live on YouTube, and you're going to pull up the Truthbusters, and you can catch the next episode.